Transit Master Plan. Just by way of a background first about this process both today and in the future, the City of Thousand Oaks back in 2013 applied for some federal grant funding for development of what's called a Transit Master Plan, and it's basically a framework to help guide how we're going to operate the transit system for the next 2, 5, 10, and even up to 20 years. We're doing this as part of the process of, for those of you that may have participated in 2014 of the city's visioning process, Visioning 2064. And so we wanted to take an opportunity to really look at transit. The city has been offering transit services in one form or another now for over 40 years. And Thousand Oaks Transit as an entity has been in existence for over 30 years. And as the community has grown, we've offered more and more transit services. But over the last 30, well actually I don't want to say 30 years, but at least the last 15 years, there really has been no change in the way that the services here are delivered in the community. It's been kind of status quo. We've made some improvements here and there, but for the most part, we haven't really taken an in-depth look to see how we provide transit services, how we can better provide the services that we do now, and looking toward the future, some things that we need to prepare for. Thousand Oaks Transit is a division, it's a part of the Public Works Department of the City of Thousand Oaks. I, as the transit manager, report directly to one of the two Public Works Deputy Directors. The budget for our program this year is about $10 million, of which about $6.5 million is for operations, and about $3.5 million is for capital projects that includes bus purchases. We also provide, in addition to providing the service here in Thousand Oaks, we also are the service provider for the City of Westlake Village, the City of Agoura Hills, the City of Moore Park, and we also provide the Canaan and Oak Park, the Canaan Shuttle and Oak Park Dial-A-Ride services for the County of Ventura. So we are a multifaceted agency. By way of ridership, we are the third largest transit provider in the county. By vehicles and by the number of staff, we are the second largest transit provider in the county. We provide a grand total of almost 400,000 rides annually, bus and dial-a-ride, over all of our service. And that number has more than doubled in the last 5 years. And so we are going to continue to see Thousand Oaks as a major transit provider here in the East County. We are also one of the founding members of the East County Transit Alliance, which is an organization of the 5 East County cities that was created to promote better service quality, uniformity, and to integrate our systems to make them easier for people to operate. So as part of this master plan process, we applied to the Southern California Association of Governments for a federal grant. It was a competitive process. We were awarded a grant. The firm of Moore & Associates, who is represented here today, and Jim Moore will make a presentation here in just a moment, is the consulting firm that is helping us prepare for this. This is a multifaceted approach. They are looking, of course, into the statistics and the demographics and census data and ridership. We're doing onboard surveys, we're doing community surveys, online surveys, surveys of drivers, surveys of dial-a-ride users, and we're having public outreach sessions such as this one. This is the 4th of 10 planned for this week period. We're going to collect a whole bunch of data, and Jim and his crew are going to do what they've been hired to do, and then present us with some ideas for making improvements to our transit system. I want to be clear that this process is very bottom up rather than top down. We're very interested in knowing from the folks in the community, both riders and non-riders alike, what it is that you want to see now and for the next 20 years in the transit system. And so Jim is going to have a brief presentation, 10-15 minutes, to kind of go over the whole process, and then we will open it up to folks for questions that are here with us, and also for those of you that are joining us online. We would encourage you to please send in your questions now. We will answer all the questions that we get today. And with that, Jim, I will turn it over to you.
coming out today and visiting with us, especially during this very busy part of the year. Does anyone actually ride the service? Has anyone ridden Thousand Oaks Transit? I see some heads nodding. As Mike indicated, it's a program that has been in place for probably between 35 and 40 years, and it has done rather a good job. However, we haven't had a real business plan, a real blueprint for service development ironically, throughout the history of the program. And that's what really, at its essence, the Transit Master Plan is. Certainly, while our ridership has increased significantly, our route network, the way that we've been providing the service, hasn't changed dramatically. And so I, along with other members of the consulting team, including Mr. Manuel Soto, who's our principal planner, will be taking an objective and comprehensive look at how the service is being provided. As Mike indicated, this is really a very community-driven process where there are many opportunities here for participation beyond this workshop, surveys, etc. And I hope when you all came in, you had an opportunity to get a copy of the community survey. This is identical to the survey that's available online, as well as some of the comment cards. If you don't want to ask a question directly, you can put together a comment card, and then one of our associates can pick that up. So what I'm going to do here is walk through this very briefly to give you some background about the project, provide Manuel Soto an opportunity if you want to help also frame the discussion here, and then get into some of the questions and comments that you may have. All right. So this is really asking the question, what should Thousand Oaks Transit look like over the next at least 10 and as far out as 20 years? Those of us who work in the public sector, particularly in public transit, we kind of live in 3 to 5 year funding cycles. And you may, if you've been watching the news recently, one of the big things to come out of Congress has been finally a compromise in terms of some federal transportation funding. And so while we can plan out for 20 years in terms of some capital projects, whether it's a enhanced transit center or additional vehicles, really from an operational perspective, we are more comfortable in sort of the 5 to 10 year range because of the big question of availability of funding. And so what should transit service look like? I mean, right now, as Mike indicated, we have a number of flavors. We have a dollar ride program, we have a fixed route program, but very possibly Manuel and I have clients who have expanded their offerings to include van pools. They've expanded them to include neighborhood shuttles, some subsidized taxi services. So at this point, really nothing is off the table for discussion. And so we'll be looking for both a short and a longer term vision for transit operations, assessing and recommending some goals, policies, and also implementation strategies. Again, while we in transit have the city's 7 sort of transit, I'll call it goals or objectives, they were created in a sort of a very broad context. Now we're getting into sort of drilling down into how do you take sort of the theoretical or the grand objective and bring it down so that it applies to the day-to-day operations, the day-to-day administration of the program. And then evaluating and defining the city's role within the regional transit network. As Mike indicated, Thousand Oaks Transit is one of 7 operators in the county, from very modest services to very large services, such as intercommunity services that are provided under the Ventura County Transportation banner. Here in Thousand Oaks, we actually have a nice variety of opportunities for transit mobility opportunities. We have a LA Metro serves Thousand Oaks, as does LA DOT. We have the shuttle service up to the Moore Park Metrolink station. And we also have 2 VCTC routes that travel through town, both for the East County and also for the 101 service. So we have quite a variety of services there. But where do we, City of Thousand Oaks, sort of fit in? So developing a vision, goals, and objectives, doing this objective and comprehensive evaluation from a quantitative standpoint, generating a series of service options, and then presenting this final plan to the Thousand Oaks City Council, which is the policy-making entity that oversees Thousand Oaks Transit. We expect to get down to the last step probably in May or June of next year. So why undertake this? Is this just a internal theoretical study? And I would posit that it is not. It really has an opportunity to more effectively meet the needs of not only persons who reside in Thousand Oaks and the Conejo Valley at large, but also persons who are employed here. Certainly want to have a more effective and efficient service, because even though we only serve about a number equal to about 10% of the total population, we rely upon the population at large, every resident, to support the service, either by through the funding initiatives, by actually patronizing it, etc. Look certainly for sustainability, so we're not putting together a program that we won't be able to roll out or be able to maintain over the years ahead, and look for ways of funding additional future capital and infrastructure improvements, such as expansion of the transportation center, new vehicles, bus stop improvements, etc. This is kind of a recap of things that we've already presented in terms of the various types of services that are provided. And then in terms of the process, we have just about completed the review of the existing services in terms of an on-time performance assessment, counting where people are boarding or alighting the vehicles at each individual bus stop, comparing how Thousand Oaks Transit performs versus comparably sized transit agencies throughout the West, looking at a demographic analysis, where the seniors live, youth, households with single vehicles or perhaps no vehicle access, persons with disabilities, etc., groups, certain housing income, things of that nature, and then a goal setting and visioning process with some of the elected officials. Quite a number of public involvement opportunities. We've completed a survey of transit riders, which we talked to about 400 of our riders. A community survey where we've received approximately 300 responses so far. Certainly encourage you to participate in that. 2 rounds of community workshops this weekend. We're conducting workshops at 10 locations throughout the Conejo Valley, and then we will come back in late March, early April, conduct a second round of workshops that will talk about here's what folks said, here's how it kind of distills down, here's the available funding, here's the options that we could pursue, get the community's feedback, get their sense of priorities and preferences, and also a series of stakeholder roundtables, representatives from the education, business, healthcare, social service, etc., those sectors of the community. And then that all leads into these 5 elements here to fit into the overall transit master plan. Certainly encourage you also to visit our webpage, because we do have that online comment form so you can follow our progress, continue to give us your feedback. So what lies ahead? Well, in the next 2 months, we expect to complete the community survey process. In January, facilitate a series of stakeholder roundtables. Manuel will start developing a series of service scenarios, conduct the second round of workshops in the late spring, and then start the public review process for the Transit Master Plan, and ultimately go to the City Council in late May, early June for hopefully adoption. So with that, Manuel, I don't know if you would like to talk anything about that, or perhaps just wait and field some questions. Mike, if you have anything that you would like to add at this point?
Thank you very much, Jim. I think I can't overemphasize enough the importance of public participation in this process, so we appreciate you all coming out today, and hopefully you've got some questions for us and some ideas for how we can improve it. And certainly we also want to encourage those people